sharing your voice and passion along with the 42 other folks or 41 other folks who are here in the room as we get started with today's meeting. Rosemary, would you like to kick us off?
You know, it's almost like Sally and Teresa did it already, because I was going to say some of the same things, but I'll just reinforce it in a little more formal way, which I've been delighted to be able to do on a weekly basis. And I'm going to be asking some of you all to take up this mantle once in a while, because we should all be sharing our thoughts about this work and what it does for us and what it can do for others. But I want to welcome everyone to our open table where we connect with respect, working to end homelessness and advocating for policies that ensure safe and secure housing for all. We gratefully acknowledge that we meet on the traditional lands of the Puyallup people who've lived in this area since the beginning of time and are still here today. We acknowledge the effects of historical trauma and continuing discrimination and call ourselves to act in support of their tribal rights. Today, I'm grateful for the ongoing work of those who are present every day with neighbors living rough on our city and county streets, roads, and in more hidden wooded areas. It's unconscionable to be over 5 years into a declared housing emergency for health in Tacoma and to still be so far from basic housing stability for over 2,500 and likely closer to 4,000 county residents. In the meantime, we recognize many efforts to provide immediate relief or assistance with limited options by mutual aid groups, those with lived experience, outreach and caseworkers within social service agencies and government entities, and by housed neighbors and other advocates who just can't stand by without doing something. All disturbed by the lack of access to basic needs, the difficulties preparing ahead for inclement weather, the trauma of persistent sweeps, of temporary encampments, or of those who stay too long in designated buffer zones. Whether these responders are with us today or out doing what they can, they bring compassion, fury, and sometimes exhaustion to this normalizing of an emergency. In the meantime is quite the phrase, and with a little twist of the words easily morphs into the mean times, times that are unbearably vicious and mean to the most vulnerable, those whose suffering matters less than other priorities. So what should we do in these mean times? Of course, all the things that keep people from dying on the streets, honoring the lives of those who have died while homeless, and in any plans for doing things, listening more closely to the voices and ideas of those who are still hanging in there, living the emergency in both creative and sometimes self-sabotaging ways. As the Coalition to End Homelessness in our Pierce County meantime, we push for public responses that don't get lost in bureaucratic time sinks, public responses with enough real options for people so that, quote, rejecting services is no longer the easy go-to story for why we can't end homelessness. We also know we have to think differently in the meantime if we're to have different results. For example, the cities and counties piloting a small guaranteed income around $500 a month are finding that this small investment permits people living at the edge to do such things as take a day off work with a job that has no sick leave so as not to infect coworkers, pay for dry cleaning of a security guard uniform so they can return to a job, or pay for car repairs that allow them to keep the job. Expanding such small dollar programs could have a huge effect on housing stability. I close this morning with a short poem to center us on the importance of listening with open minds and hearts, what Teresa and Sally were talking about, and to imagine taking different actions that might bring different outcomes. Poet Portia Nelson writes in the first person, but it doesn't take much to make that I into a we. I know I see myself here, but I see us too. So here it is, an autobiography in 5 chapters. It really is short though. First chapter, I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm hopeless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. Can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. Still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it's there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It's my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5, I walk down another street. So in the meantime, we can imagine altogether what that other street might be. So welcome to our Friday meeting, especially those joining us for the first time or joining us again after some time away. we'll start with some brief introductions. But first, just to remind you of what our norms are for the meeting that we have. And we ask that you keep yourselves on mute when you're not speaking. Turn your video off if you're doing other things that might be distracting. And use the raise hand function for anytime you'd like to be recognized. And also, just to remind those who are new that we use the chat function as a great way to communicate during the meeting. So it's not disrespectful to carry on conversations there, put in information, contact information, questions you have that you can't have time to ask because we have our meeting is usually pretty packed. So with that, I'd like to invite anyone who is here for the first time and joining us to just let us know your name if you're associated with a group. But if not, that's fine, but not a long introduction, just so we have a basic sense of who you are, and you can add things to the chat later. So anybody here would like to introduce themselves? Yes, Shannon.
Hi, can you guys hear me? I'm not sure if my speaker's working.
Yes.
We can.
Okay, I'm Shannon. I'm with LASA, and I was asked to attend today for the first time.
Welcome, Shannon. It's great to have you.
And Caitlin, thank you for introducing yourself in the chat. And Megan as well.
That's great. And so do that and invite other people to join us too, if you think they might be interested. Rob, I'll turn it back to you.
All right. Thank you, Rosemary. Always appreciate your openings to the meeting. And yes, we should open up and shuffle around to allow other folks to take on some of these roles, including the facilitating role that I do. So if anyone has an interest, drop your name in the chat. It'd be great to hear other voices. I think my droning voice, people probably get a little tired of it for 2 hours straight every Friday. So let's have some variety here. Let's open with the same first topic that we do every week, which is talking about what's happening on the streets this week. This is an opportunity to get updates from folks who are doing outreach, whether you work for a nonprofit or you do this on your own as a way to help our houseless neighbors. And we can talk about the context of what's going on the streets. We're going to talk a little bit later for a few minutes about cold weather, because we know we have that coming up. We just came through a couple of days of cold weather and a touch of snow. So apparently winter is not done with us yet, but I will open the floor. If you just use the raise hand function, or if you're on camera, just literally raise your hand, I'll call on you. And first I see Jan with her hand up.
Thanks, Rob. I'm going to kick this off with just an example of how well this coalition functions. Except my lower hand function's not working. Here we go. Okay, so because I'm a nurse with Medical Reserve Corps, which is the volunteer branch of the health department, I have the honor of being able to work with other nurses to do different kinds of community nurse projects. And so I have the honor to have Paige Wells here. She's with us today. She's been working on our coalition's website to keep the overnight shelter information current, which is quite a task. So we've been going around to different shelters and having great experiences meeting shelter managers in person. But because also we belong to this coalition, we know people like Richard and Teresa who actually go out as volunteer outreach folks to serve folks who are living in encampments. So Richard had brought it to my attention that there's a woman by the name of Bree at the Union Avenue Loop who seems pretty sick. Maybe could use some more attention. So Paige and I on Tuesday, I think it was, swung by the Union Avenue Loop because it was also going to be the beginning of some really bad cold weather. It was on Tuesday. So because we're part of this coalition, we know that there is a cold weather response and that shelters are able to add mats, add more services and more beds in shelters to save life and limb. So Paige and I go to Union Avenue to find Bree to ask her if she would be willing to go to shelter for the night. She said that she was fine where she was. She did not want to seek shelter for that night, regardless of the temperature, but that there were others at Union Avenue. And sure enough, Paige and I found another woman who said that she wanted shelter because it was so cold. So Paige and I went to Tacoma Rescue Mission Women's Shelter. And the woman, Brandy, is the manager there, and she was saying yes, they will take more women tonight because of the weather. And we said, but by the way, there's no transportation from Union Avenue Loop to shelter. So the manager at Tacoma Rescue Mission gave us the number for Davina's team, the Tacoma Rescue Mission Search and Rescue Team. 3 phone numbers. If one doesn't work, you're supposed to call the next one. Sure enough, the second number of the Tacoma Rescue Mission Search and Rescue van answered. And it was Madeline, who comes to these coalition meetings. So Madeline took our call, found out about a couple of women that we had met, went, and I find this all out the next day, went to Union Avenue to verify that there were women willing to go to shelter, but the shelter doesn't open until 6:30. So Madeline's team went back a second time to pick one woman up by the name of Christine, who we hadn't met, but needed shelter. So Madeline, because she works for Tacoma Rescue Mission Search and Rescue van, provided both the contact and the transportation to get to shelter that night for Christine. And it turns out that Christine got a hot meal, a hot shower, and a warm shelter bed that night. So it took a ton of different connections from this coalition, also to include our serious response to cold weather. So for that, I applaud everybody here in the room. So it's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan, and thanks for sharing how many steps and hands it takes to be able to make those connections. It's great to hear a success story. Jeffrey, I see your hand up.
Good morning, everyone. I do want to say that there was another moment like that also with Veterans Village. Found out that Tammy, the manager, had gotten in a car accident and was not around. They reached out to me saying, hey, we're short on propane. Of course, out there, we have to use propane bottles to heat those tents. And so I was able to get out there and get 3 bottles filled for them just for the one night. They are still in need for the next week, but we got at least the one night taken care of. They are also short on water, so I put out a call to another group who has provided water to Veterans Village. And I have not heard back from them yet, but I am surely hoping to hear today. So the whole idea is we all have connections and we all work with each other. And I'm telling you, that is the most incredible thing. When this weather gets bad, people in this coalition step up and do things. And whatever we can do to help, sanctioned or unsanctioned camps, there are people needing help. So let's keep it going and keep working.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
If I could just jump in real quick, Rob. Jeffrey,
Yeah.
I appreciate you helping, but they can call me. We've got money to buy it, so I'm not sure why no one called me. So I'll give them a call and find out what's happening. But we can afford to purchase water and propane.
Yeah, I know you can. The problem was the guy that was there didn't have the information.
Oh, that's bad. Don't say that on the whole coalition.
Well, it just, I'm going to help you out, Monique, any way I can. You know that.
Okay, well, thank you.
Is Tammy okay, Monique?
She's bruised up pretty bad. The guy ran the light. Her car is totaled. Airbag went off, but she's bruised up pretty good. She's gonna take the rest of this. She took the rest of the week from when she got in the accident. She'll come back Monday. She's doing okay though. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for closing that loop there. And glad to hear that Tammy's gonna be fine. Richard, I see your hand up next.
Yeah, just real quickly, some more on Union Loop. We are taking food on Tuesday and Friday afternoon at 3:30. We leave. We're there and back inside of an hour if anybody would like to join us. Additionally, at Union Loop, one man got into drug treatment at CMAR. And as we continue to serve food, people like Dana are doing outreach, connecting with people. Some are trying to make appointments at CCS. And so by being on the ground, talking to people and getting to know them, steady, slow progress is being made. One woman wants to go into shelter, but is concerned about her possessions. And when we're out today, we'll talk with her about, is there ways that we could actually store those for her so that she can get into shelter. So anybody's interested in serving food is welcome to join us. It's quick and easy and tends to be a lot of fun and way to get to know some of these people that are out there. Just real quickly on sweeps, I've heard that the G Street next to Rake Park, the 7 or 8 tents has been swept, although I have not seen that yet. And the tent at 11th and Cushman, they were hassled a little bit by the city, but they're planning to move on. They're trying to get their possessions organized so that they can move them off of that. The question, the problem that all this presents, in addition to being sweeps, is we're not getting notice of these sweeps in any systematic way. So if anybody on this call is seeing a sweep underway, the coalition listserv would be one way to get word of that out. Since the city doesn't seem to be inclined to let us know when they're sweeping, we're going to just have to stay vigilant. And if we self-communicate, that might be the way to let people know what's happening out there. Otherwise, you stumble on this after the fact, and there's no way to sort of monitor what's going on when the sweeps are occurring. Because I'm hearing about these small sweeps going on. I'm not hearing from Rob. I'm not hearing on anything anywhere. Other than that they're continuing to sweep with wild abandon and not notifying the coalition or anybody else that they're doing that. So that's kind of what I'm seeing out there around town right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. And to get beyond Tacoma, Norman, any updates you can offer from Fife?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Gosh, we're seeing, unfortunately, we're also doing sweeps, but we do it in a really methodical way where we go out, we have work with Common Streets, Colin DeForest, a lot of resources go out there before the sweeps happen. I'm certainly going out there doing outreach, just let people know what is our capacity in our tiny home shelter. We put 3 people in. We have 2 people in pending background, so our shelter will be full. But the great news is our permanent village will be starting very soon, which will increase our capacity. I'm seeing our sheriffs work together. And again, I know I'm on this coalition and I'm a member, but I also work for the city. And there's 2 sides. I mean, the sheriffs, as they talk about the sweeps, they are coordinating services with our outreach teams. And I agree 100%. I think we should, our problem is not a city problem. It's not a city of Fife. It's not a Tacoma problem. It's a Pierce County problem. We need to have a safe place where we could send people. I mean, it seems like we're pushing people away from an area just to aesthetically please a neighborhood. If we could send people to an encampment or have a sanctioned encampment where we have garbage services, where we have the basic health services, because we're all humans. And I hate to tell you, it is not unexpected that a human uses the bathroom, that a human produces garbage. I mean, we all do. So keep your voices loud. I mean, I know I'm talking on behalf of the city. I just have to tone it down a little bit more than you guys do, as I'm a city employee, but your voices are being heard. We need to think of this as a Pierce County problem, because it's not a city problem. All we're doing is pushing people to Tacoma or to Fife or to Puyallup just to aesthetically please a neighborhood for a short period of time. I'm here to work on the problem, not to aesthetically please a neighborhood, but that is what politicians have to be concerned about. So when you guys talk, please understand I'm 100% on your side, but then I see the other side of the situation where there's the reality of how much it costs to clean up an encampment, the dangers that go on. And again, I'm on your side, so please don't hate me, but I have to tell the reality of the cost. I know, I see you, Rob. The cost involved of cleanups and the human, because it affects not just the homeless community. Please understand, people, businesses are getting robbed. Houses are being broken into. I mean, vandalism happens. And again, our unhoused residents are still resident in our community. That's what we need to get through to people. They are our citizens. And what we really need to do, if you really want to make a change, let's get their voting power together. Let's get them registered to vote. If our council members don't agree with us, we have a powerful base if we could get them to vote. I bet you people listen then. And hopefully I keep my job after all this conversation, Rob.
I'll send it to your city manager right now. No, I appreciate it. And we have to be candid here sometimes, and I definitely appreciate it. Richard, is your hand up again, or is it from previously?
From previously, I'll drop it.
Okay, no problem. And Kenneth, yeah, it is recorded. It'll be posted on the coalition website later. But you're good, Norman. Appreciate what you're doing. And one question I did have for you, Norman, though, is the sweeps, some of the sweeps you're referring to sound like they're in the right of way for the 167 expansion. So
right now
is part of that the different approach that they're taking using the state right-of-way funding that Colin has access to? So where I know their goal ultimately is very different than what has been done with other sweeps, where they're trying to get people into some sort of shelter or housing first.
That is correct. So we're working with
Okay.
WashDOT,
Yeah.
and you're talking about the Spur 167, where the highway's going and there's so many encampments involved. But then we're getting all the other, we're getting all of the other agencies that are doing outreach, CLR. I'm now in meetings. Recently, we made a huge change since we're part of one of our grants is Pierce County. So I'm going to start taking referrals from this coalition throughout Pierce County. So City of Fife is really doing an incredible job as far as being on the forefront of battling this. So we're in the struggle. We recognize, I mean, and coming from Tacoma, wow, it's a huge difference. I mean, in Tacoma is where all the shelter beds are, where most of the service providers are. Sometimes in Fife, I mean, I want to get more connected with Tacoma, but yet I want to do it in a diplomatic way. And again, I'm trying not to get anybody mad at me, but the last thing I want to do is upset certain people, because Tacoma is the center hub for homelessness. Let's just all recognize that with all the services. I mean, that's where the shelters are, Salvation Army, that's where everything is. So I'm trying to get more connected with you guys, do a better job at providing resources. But yeah, it's 100% clearing out for the highway, but there's inadvertent consequences, because once you push them off the right of way, then they're in our cities, and then we are dealing with other situations. So we're really trying to be we're trying to do it with a heart. And again, I know so many people here, I sweep with a heart, right? Like that happens, but I swear it does. And I'm in the meetings and I'm hearing Brendan, who knows almost every single person at these encampments. I'm hearing Colin do updates, and I'm talking about they know names, they know how many people are in their family. I mean, it's really a methodical concern. So whenever I see sweeps, it is being done in a logical manner where outreach is being done. They're giving them 72-hour warnings. I mean, it's weird to be on this coalition and actually represent a city because it's new to me, first of all, but we are doing it with, I don't like to use the word love because we're pushing people off. And where do they go? And the inadvertent consequences are they're going to go somewhere. So they're leaving Tacoma, they're coming to Fife, they're coming to Fife, they're going to Puyallup. I mean, it's just like we're shuffling people around. And it's really, if you think about it, that's really one of the most expensive ways to not solve a problem, because we're not solving the problem doing that. All we're doing is aesthetically pleasing the neighborhood. So that way people be quiet and stop complaining.
Yeah, thanks, Norman. And I'm glad to hear that you're, at least in those situations, that you have access to the right-of-way funds, because that does, it's an extra resource and a different approach. And it's being done in parts of Tacoma as well that are alongside highways with those state funds. So thank you for that update. And to close out this week on the streets, don't mean to put you on the spot, Paula, but anything you would offer from East Pierce County?
You know, the only thing that I would say is we're still struggling with the NIMBYism, you know, that is rampant with every corner of our county and our world right now. That it's quiet in the neighborhood because people get pushed out, and like everybody's been saying, there's no place for people to go, so they show up. People are hurting. Their eyes are downcast. They don't feel good about themselves. They're surprised that we welcome them in, that we give them the time of day, and they come from all around, and they're coming in smaller numbers. It's like they don't believe that there's actually a place that people will care about them and allow them there. There are still sweeps that are going around in Puyallup. Even our community service officer doesn't like to have to do what they have to do according to what they're mandated to do by the city. And it is, you know, they have the motel, but it's 20 rooms. And we have more than that are in the city. For those that are in need of treatment services can be offered, but again, there's a wait time. So people are having to rethink and think again, and then they get worried, and then they're not able to get the service that they need right away. And so it's hard. People are giving up. I would say that they are giving up, and the hardest thing to see is someone who gives up on themselves. And we spend, my staff, I have a wonderful staff, and they spend a lot of time trying to get people to just believe in themselves. That is the core thing that we do as service providers, I think, is trying to get people to believe in themselves enough to take a chance and try and make a change in their lives. And boy, when you're pushed around and told you can't stay here and looked down upon, that repair work takes twice as long as it does to put somebody down and have that impact them and knock them down. It takes twice as long to bring them back up. And so all the work that we do, it's important, and it's just a struggle. It's just a struggle. We need more housing. We all know that. The things that everyone knows, we know. And if we can just get that information out, if our community would listen to us, if our legislators would listen to us, if we could get people that have the money to invest in that, to take a look at the opportunities that we know need to occur, and they need to occur more quickly than they are, boy, we could change some things, but, you know, I love every person on this call because we're doing it. We're standing here, boots on the ground, we're doing it, but it's a mighty fight.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Paula, for that perspective. And Jay, why don't you close out this portion of our meeting?
As much as we're looking at the bottom of it and how people are becoming hopeless, the other end of it is the unending tide that keeps moving towards us from the top. As long as our rent caps keep raising, but our economy keeps crashing, then it's just more layers of people that are more likely to be put in housing before the people on the bottom. The weight of everything coming down is so crushing that when you're on the bottom and you have been on and off for years, and it's already so hard to just try to start again because you know that there will be failure somewhere and you do not know how far you will fall again, the next time. It will happen next time. And then you have people that you know is going to get housing within in months because they're new into the cycle and have never done this and still have a job. Then you know you're 3 houses further back from getting a position or getting a home or getting help. If we don't stem rent rising, if we don't stem housing cost arbitrary to low income equals $5,000 a month, if we don't stop the damage from the top, we will never pick up the people from the bottom.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. And a great reminder that ultimately housing is the solution. And we simply as a state, as a community, as a region, don't have enough. So we've got to tackle that issue. And let's see, so let's shift gears just a little bit to talk about the impending cold weather that's coming. I know I'm tired of winter. A lot of folks are tired of winter, and the folks who are out on the street especially are tired of the weather for this winter. But unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have another deep cold spell next week. The forecast looks like around Wednesday through at least next Saturday, we're going to have sub-freezing temperatures with lows into the lower 20s. And some potential for snow. It's too hard to tell right now. So because of that, just wanted to mention that if you have an interest in helping our unhoused neighbors during the cold, a reminder that if you go to the coalition website and sign up for the inclement weather mailing list serve, that is a good place to be able to share information about resources and responding to folks who are outdoors in the cold. Pierce County has also been providing a space for us to convene, to hold regular meetings at 9 a.m. every morning. And we did 2 of those this week during the cold spell, and we'll be back to that again on Tuesday next week, and posting information about that on the inclement weather listserv. One tip for the listserv, especially for inclement weather, is when you sign up, make sure you don't sign up for the digest version for that list, because that would mean you'll get a once a day email. It's difficult to be able to respond to emerging needs if you're only getting that email once a day. And if I believe the way that it works is that the cutoff is 4 p.m. So any message that happens after 4 p.m., if you're on the digest, you won't see it until a day later. So just wanted to let folks know that that is a good resource to use. And then Jay, you want to provide some additional context?
I just put in the chat the need share. So please go to that document and add needs as needed to the need share section. And everybody can go to that, look who needs things, look who has things to share, and it should have contact information. If nothing else, please email the listserv with your need share and we'll add it to that list, or we'll address it. Also, if you are contracted outreach, we would love to see you at the meeting at noon on Monday, and in particular on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week at the 9 to 9:30 meeting, so that we can touch base with everybody and see who has beds available, if we're using those hypothermia kits that were given to us, if they are effective, and what people need, don't need, and how our response is working out, what is getting what needs to be hit in outreach that we're missing possibly and otherwise. So greatly appreciated if you would come, greatly appreciated if you would do the listserv. I'm no longer doing the thread. So if we could make sure we sign on to the inclement weather listserv, if you haven't done so, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jay. Folks who are doing inclement weather response, anything else you would add as we go into the weekend? Okay. Go ahead, Jan.
St. Vincent de Paul is a staging area for supplies, and they have a lot of great supplies, cold weather supplies. So St. Vincent de Paul, if you are an outreach person, either volunteer or paid.
Thank you, Jan. All right. So the next item on our agenda is, there was some conversation during the planning meeting that took place after last week's regular meeting about the idea of creating some sort of a document that could be used as almost like a decision tree when people are interacting with folks on the street, trying to help people who they encounter. And I wanted to, so we're not going to directly address that this morning, but I did want to make people aware of a document that was created by Dana late last year in November, I believe. That's just a simple one-pager that is something that exists today. This was a document that was created for the folks down at Marlene's off of South 38th to replace something that they had previously had posted in their store that was out of date. So I'm going to do a quick screen share here of this document, and then I'll drop it in the chat afterward. But I want to recognize this is not exactly what folks were talking about, but it's something that we have that exists now, in addition to what already exists on the coalition website. So the coalition website does have a link to a resources section as well, that goes into much more depth than what you see here. And I've reviewed that with everybody on the call in previous meetings, but that goes to a page that is managed by Comprehensive Life Resources that kind of walks you through how to help an individual. Essentially, if you're one-on-one with somebody, and it asks you questions like male or female, age, what kind of services they need, that sort of thing. But I just wanted to let folks know who are interested in this, that there is this document. Obviously, there's more that can be added to it. And this doesn't quite directly address the concerns that were being brought up at the end of the meeting last week, but I will drop this in the chat so that folks have this resource to be able to work with immediately. And I think we dropped this in the chat back in November when it originally was created as well. But I end up relying on the pchomeless.org site a lot for sending people the resources, not just to shelter, but telling people where they can go to do a coordinated intake interview, today before 5 p.m., that sort of thing. And I know there's a need for these kinds of resources, and we probably haven't hit the sweet spot yet. So Teresa, I see your hand up.
Just because I saw it on the resource page, I'm wondering, I heard that the Coffee Oasis is no longer taking people overnight. It's a short-term thing because of being low staffed. Is anyone here from the Coffee Oasis or anyone who's working with them who can verify or deny that or let us know what's going on? Sounds like not, but anyway, I would just recommend that, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Jen and I went over there, and I don't know if she's still here in the meeting. But there was something that's all under construction. All the rooms seem to be under construction. And I think that's what's going on.
Okay, well, they had a fire pretty recently, but no one was in there or injured or anything when the fire happened. And so, okay, thank you. So it sounds like we shouldn't be referring young people there right now if they need shelter.
When you call, because I've been making the daily calls or most every day. It even says on their voice message that they are currently, like, it's not under construction, but they have some verbiage around it.
Okay, thank you for that. And so this is a point that I did want to make. That was updated in November. Maybe we need to have somebody call all of those and update that. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. Yeah, things change all the time. That's actually one of the challenges as well with the coalition's website. And thank you again to Paige for the work you've been doing to try to get us more up to speed with updated shelter numbers and those sorts of things so that the information is more useful. Ryan.
So since we're on the subject of resources, after last week's meeting, we had a conversation about kind of a decision tree for 911 calls. Like, how do we get people to the right resources efficiently? And so I met with Kenneth King and the folks down at PCA, and we kind of went through how do you triage things and whatnot. And we came up with a rather simple tree to kind of, if you encounter somebody and this is the situation, how do you get them to the right services? And I'm in the process of vetting it. I met with the Tacoma Police yesterday, and we kind of talked through it and some services. They have a list of resources in and around domestic violence. I have a hard copy of it, but there's a soft copy, I'm sure, somewhere. If we can, I could look to see about getting us a link to that. And of course, when we finish the decision tree for the 911 stuff, I'll be glad to share that too. And if anybody has any questions, go ahead and chat me.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. And to kind of close this segment a little bit, the next steps in this is we were going to pull together kind of a panel of folks. And I think Ryan going over the resource that you're working on would be helpful in that follow-up conversation. But we thought we'd bring some folks who do respond to situations to kind of walk through what should I do when I encounter someone in this situation. So that's coming to a meeting near you in the future, hopefully soon. But we wanted to get folks off and running with the resources that exist right now. So appreciate that and appreciate the conversation. Sorry I wasn't there for the meeting last week because I had to run to something else. I can't even remember what I had to go to. Yeah, Kenneth.
Just really quick while we're talking about the resource lists and stuff like that. When any of the teams like outreach teams for TRM or our city teams or even my team come out to partner with you, we cannot just give you a list of resources. I've had a few places that are like, okay, give me a list. And I'm like, that's not how it works. These lists, like this list that Rob just posted is one example for each, or one or two examples for each need. We have a list of like 10, 15 different like appropriate resources that we have to try to navigate for folks. And it's an ever-changing list. Sometimes these places, as much as we love them, they're only able to exist for like 3 months at a time. And so and we saw that with the time stamp on this one, like we can't just hand you a list of resources as much as we want to. We're doing the work as best we can to like make sure that we got the ability to like connect you with those resources, but it's ever changing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, appreciate that. And Jay, I see your hand up as well.
Hey, curiosity. So Northwest Hospitality has an ever-changing list as well, but it's like a database that they have open on their online thing. Do you possibly discuss with somebody about possibly making that a possibility? Like look at Northwest Hospitality.org's database list that they have. It's an online interactive, and see if that's possible because it's set up by keyword. And maybe we could start looking at giving that to people because it would be something akin but more user friendly than 211.
So, yes. Also, Ryan Mello was working on an app, I think last year, that was going to do this. And now that, and I'm going to say that things are different this year than they were last year as an example of how things change, because we are communicating better. And we are also including those non-contracted teams and those non-contracted community centers. And so I think it's going to be a lot easier for us to have information access quicker to those changes. So I'll check in with Ryan if I can at some point and see how that app's coming, and maybe we can combine these all.
All right, appreciate the continuing conversation, folks, and we will move on to the next item in our agenda, because what do you know, we've gone beyond our agenda times again. So every week you'd think I'd learn. So next up, we are going to do a breakout review from last week's discussion. So Timothy, if I can put that on the screen, if you want to talk us through it.
Yeah, I'm ready to go with that. So last week, we were hotly anticipating Victoria Woodard's State of the City speech this week, and we were talking about, we broadened the question to apply to everybody in the room. What would you like to hear your community leaders say about homelessness? And we got a lot of great feedback on that. I tried to divide it into, to make it sort of accessible. And, people said that they wanted to hear our leaders speak the truth, that they wanted to hear our leaders speak with compassion. And there's some examples there of what people meant by that. And then there was a fairly rich list of strategies that people felt that we should be doing more around, highlighting effective work to encourage a more optimistic outlook. That's something that we see a lot of work getting done and nobody's really selling it. And that creates this sort of ongoing sense of community despair when there's a lot of great stuff that's inspiring, that's happening that we don't hear about. The importance of support for the 10% tax, coming up again, how devastating the ID issue can be and how slowly that can move somewhere that we could put some energy and maybe make a big difference. A lot of talk around the need for more housing. We heard a sort of a heartbreaking story last week about developmentally delayed people landing on the street because elderly people are becoming homeless who used to be their caretakers, the aging of the homeless population. That's coming up again. Again, sanction campsites, it's just so obvious that people need to have somewhere to go. And that, we need resources that are spread out because people want to be able to live near their support networks and not have to be dislocated to new communities. And then finally, I'm just highlighting some of the stuff in here. The importance of case management and follow up with people once they get into housing and how thinly our system tends to be stretched there. And in conclusion, as always, I just took the various resources that people dropped into the chat and neatened it up a little bit so that it's easy for people to get to. And that's something I'm happy to do as part of this each week.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, Timothy. That is really useful and provides just one-click access for folks to follow issues and you know, move the content beyond this 2 hours we spend together on Friday mornings. All right, so that cues up our time to have this week's breakout conversation. And this kind of ties into the resources conversation that we just had. So we thought it would be useful if folks in the breakout room this week talked about what are some of the best resources you use when you encounter somebody in distress, what's been helpful and what hasn't. And again, the procedure here is the same as always. We'll go into smallish breakout rooms for about 15 minutes. And if somebody could take notes in your breakout about what resources have worked for you and what hasn't, our hope is we can come out of this a little better informed after the review next week and help guide us in the panel presentation we hope to put together to talk about the best way to respond to different situations. So I'm going to send us into breakout rooms now, and I'll see you all back here in 15 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. Who knows who we cut off in the middle of conversation this time? Hopefully that was a worthwhile time to network and talk about today's topic. If you were the note taker in your room, please paste your notes in the chat. And again, a reminder, the more complete the notes, the more magic that Timothy can do with the summary. And let's move on to the next item on our agenda, which is our regular government updates. And Matthew from the city of Tacoma, I believe I saw you on the call. Do you have anything to share with us today?
There we go. Good morning, everyone. No major updates this week, aside from I did find out this week that no one has been cited or arrested under the encampment ordinance yet, which is good news. So, I mean, that's kind of the last resort. So that was good news to hear. But that's my main update for the week. You know, still waiting on safe parking to get staffed up at Holy Rosary, and waiting on Brotherhood Rise for a few inspections, and hoping to have that site up and running by the end of this month. So those are my major updates. And yeah, good news on no one being cited or arrested.
Thank you for that information, Matthew. And Donna, I think you were going to do the update for Pierce County Human Services.
Yes. Well, good morning. So I just have a few things. I just wanted to remind everyone to be on the lookout for our HHP NOFAs. So they're coming out soon. So just wanted folks to be aware of that. And the second thing is I wanted to share that Pierce County was acknowledged by President Biden. So what it was is that we were called out by President Biden for our work on housing and homelessness with our ARPA funding. So the quote from Biden was, Pierce County and the state of Washington, you're addressing homelessness by increasing affordable housing stock and partnering with nonprofits to get to the root of the problem. So Councilmember Hitchin and Chair Mello was in attendance wherever it was. And so she's the one that let us know about that shout out.
Wow.
So, yep.
Thank you for that update, Donna.
You're welcome.
All right. And Jenny from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department.
Hey, y'all. Good morning. I don't really have anything today. I'm just going to be open and I'm here till 11 for questions, concerns folks have, but refer to my prior messages the last couple of weeks. Nothing new.
Okay, that's actually nothing new is actually
no syphilis, no monkeypox, no
nothing.
Come on. My goodness.
No, Richard, of course. Monkeypox is totally stable. We haven't seen any new cases in, I think, several weeks. We, of course, do have an ongoing syphilis issue in the community, but my messaging is the same. I can share you know, the STD clinic here at TPCHD. I can share that information if folks have questions to get folks connected. But our STD folks are working really hard getting connected with folks. We've had some outreach teams connect with our STD team to actually work with folks and follow up with them, which has been great. Recently talked to Elliot Bagwell, who most of you probably know, who was at CMAR, now is at Greater Lakes, about connecting with some folks in the community, and worked with Norman and others in Fife to kind of to track some folks down. But we've made some good connections there. COVID is sort of status quo the last few weeks. We haven't seen an uptick in hospitalization. So things are, of course, there are still lots of things going on, but things are a little quiet on the COVID front and on the respiratory illness front. So that is definitely good news. If you have
We'll
specific
take that as
questions,
good
though,
news.
yeah,
We'll take
please,
that as good
please
news
do
for
reach
sure.
out if you have concerns about those specific things. And I'll get you connected with the right folks.
Awesome. And I know Isaiah sent me an email before today's meeting saying, you know, that's one of the questions as we move forward and move into hopefully some normalcy, is what kinds of updates would we like to have from Pierce County Health, from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. So that's one of the things as a group we can think about what would be helpful. And I appreciate you, Jenny and Isaiah, for both being here and knowing that you're going to be so responsive when the next issue pops up. So thank you.
Hey, Rob,
All
so
right.
I actually am here today, so I was able to hop on.
Awesome.
Minute. Yeah, I sent an email earlier to Rob saying I wasn't able to attend, but the stars aligned. But I'm much like Jenny. I mean, I don't have a lot, which is good. I mean, I guess I can say that TPCHD, we're trying to draft our heat action plan. So functionally how TPCHD would work with other community organizations in the area in response to extreme heat. That's not specific to houseless folks. It's just a general, you know, as we know, heat is a pretty dangerous thing, especially for people who are older or folks who are pregnant. So it can be, it's going to be much more of a widespread kind of action. But that being said, I'm trying, of course, to add in that element of making sure that we're taking care of our houseless neighbors, right? So I can't share that out because it's still drafted and comms, and you know how things go around here, but that is happening. So that's good news. Another kind of small update is that we are also doing a project where we're gathering providers who are working with folks who are houseless to gather more information about certain kinds of health impacts we're seeing so we can better implement public policy in regards to that. So TPCHD is doing that, and we have our consultant who is here today, Sally. Not to call you out, we don't have to share too much about it right now, but it's still really early, so we're doing our first focus group in about 2 weeks here. But so that being said, if you know someone that might be interested, we would love to connect with you and just get more thoughts about like what kind of health impacts you're seeing. But other than that, that's all I got.
That's great information, Isaiah, and great to hear that work's going on. And appreciate again both you and Jenny being weekly attendees because you do bring very important information, especially when there's some emerging issue like my cough. So let's move on to the next item on our agenda. I did want to mention that Ivan from Pierce County Department of Emergency Management was on the call earlier this morning when we were going through this week on the streets and talking about the cold weather. So want to do a quick shout out to Ivan for being here. He did have to step away. Sally.
I have a data question. I know the comprehensive plan to end homelessness has a goal of functional zero for homelessness. I'd like to see the data. How many people are coming into homelessness? How many people are exiting to appropriate and workable housing, and whether our net number is going up or down. And it'd be nice to see that on a regular basis. Regular to me means monthly. That might be too frequent, but we really need to see the data to know whether all the activity we're participating in is having the impact that we hope for. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sally. And I do know that the county is working on dashboards with that information. they've been previewing that, and this is a great segue into the update on the Pierce County Comprehensive Plan to end homelessness, which is next on our agenda. We have had the advisory board for the comprehensive plan has had a preview of some data that has been shared in past months. I can dig up some of that. Some of it's probably posted on the comprehensive plan to end homelessness webpage in the packets for previous meetings. But there is a plan to actually have a public facing dashboard that folks will be able to review to see that data. I can say the data exists. I can also say though that last time I think I saw it, the inflows of new people becoming homeless still overwhelmed the outflows of people departing homelessness, which is at the heart of our challenge, not just in this community, but across the region, the state. So that's great context. And I will post the link to the comp plan. I've got it in my notes document here. Just a second. The link to their webpage, the webpage for the comprehensive plan to end homelessness is here. And so the segue into an update regarding the comp plan and the advisory board. So I believe last Friday I shared that the advisory board for the comp plan was meeting once again to finish deliberations on what the recommendation would be from the advisory board to the Pierce County Council regarding the question of where and how a unified regional approach to homelessness should be set up in Pierce County. And I wanted to share where that advisory board landed. This is the option that the majority of folks on the advisory board landed on. What I will share, so what this says is the county will create an executive authority inside the county solely focused on ending homelessness, and in doing so, seek necessary collaboration with other jurisdictions using a memorandum of understanding or an interlocal agreement as appropriate. It'll do this under the oversight of a reconstituted continuum of care, the COC, with adequate staff support to get the data it needs and the tools to be successful, and provide adequate representation of persons with lived experience, other marginalized voices, philanthropy, and business. That's a lot of words. Essentially, if you recall the conversation that we'd reviewed here a couple of meetings ago, there were three options. This is essentially a blended version of option 1, 2, and 3 in some ways. But it was, I did want to make note that there were three of us who actually made our preference very clear for developing an independent entity to have a interlocal agreement that which would then have an independent entity overseeing and coordinating the approach to homelessness across the county. I was one of those three votes, as was Courtney and Fatima Lawrence from Catholic Community Services. I believe all three of us gave, well, I don't want to speak for Courtney, but I know I gave kind of a sideways thumb on the option that was chosen because I didn't feel that it was the strongest option of the three. But this is where we have landed. And so that's kind of closing that loop. That information is going to be conveyed to the Pierce County Council, which already had heard the consultant's report on the unified regional approach. And so now we will see how that moves forward within the mechanisms of Pierce County government. Anything you would add? I know Cynthia Stewart is with us and was part of that conversation, as well as Courtney. Either of you, anything you would like to share?
I will say that I felt very emotional afterwards. I feel that in this experience, lived experience and marginalized voices were not centered, and therefore it does not give me a great deal of hope for it to be centered moving forward, but I will strive to continue in that fight.
Thank you, Courtney. And Cynthia?
I apologize for having my camera off. I just want to say that I have some of the same reservations, but I did vote for the proposal that you just read, Rob. I voted for it because I believe the COC has to be reconstituted. It has to be improved. And I believe that an entity can be created under Pierce County ordinance that is nevertheless independent of the county executive and the county human services department. If I did not think it could be independent, I would not have voted for it. So I am working by myself right now on a little proposal that I'm going to pop out one of these days that would demonstrate how this could be done in ordinance, that also emphasizes the need for community engagement and lived experience participation on an equal basis. So I just wanted to add that a little bit because I do share some of the same reservations that others of you have.
Yeah, thank you for that context, Cynthia, and for your part in moving this forward. And now we will try to see it. Ultimately, the whole goal of this comp plan is to transform the way that our county is approaching homelessness and get more coordinated and more and essentially better at doing this work, and also to increase the resources that are available for doing the work moving forward. So this really is still a starting point. It's, you know, I stepped away from last Friday's 2+ hour meeting feeling much like Courtney. I think I was a bit deflated, but I know we need to continue to move the work forward, and that's what we'll do. We'll continue to put our heads down and try to make progress here. So that's the update on the comprehensive plan. If folks have other questions and want to drop those in the chat, that would be great. I wanted to once again offer a little bit of updated information about advocacy. And last week, I was going to do a quick overview with some tips for how to engage in advocacy at the state level. And this information was pasted in the document that that Timothy put together, but a number of links that folks can use just to keep track of legislation and advocacy opportunities at the state level. I'm going to do a quick screen share and walk through some of these resources just for a couple of minutes so that folks can get familiar with what exists. So let me share my screen. So I'm just going to kind of walk through the links that I just put in the chat. So the first one that I put is this leg.wa.gov site. This is a great, very functional front page to finding out what's happening each day during the legislative session in Olympia. And it provides a number of key pieces of information that are really helpful. You can see the schedule and have direct links to the video of each of these meetings, as well as to their agendas, so you can see which bills are being considered on a given day. But it also offers a quick reminder of one way that folks can engage with their legislators, and that is by calling the legislative hotline. It's a 1-800 number that's open until 7 p.m. every day, which provides a real easy way for folks to say, hey, Speaker Jenkins, I think it's really a priority that this bill moves forward, that kind of thing. So that's one opening place where you can find information about what's happening in the legislature today. You can also, if there are bills that you have an interest in signing in pro on or signing in to actually provide testimony on, this site it's at app.leg.wa.gov/CSI. The way that this works is you can go to, let's say there's a Senate Housing Committee meeting today. So I'm going to go here to Housing, select today's meeting, and it'll show me which items are on the agenda for today's Senate Housing Committee meeting. And when you click on one of those items, it offers an opportunity for you to, well, in this case, the only opportunity that really still exists for you is to submit written testimony, because it's less than an hour before the meeting. In fact, it's 2 minutes before the meeting right now. If you sign in a day before, even up to an hour before the meeting, you will have the opportunity on anything that's included on the agenda to sign in and say you're pro or con on that particular legislation, as well as have links to submit written testimony or to sign up to speak and give testimony live on Zoom. So that's another way that you can engage. And then you can also look up individual bills by going to the bill information page and find what the current status is of a given bill. This is a bill that we talked about earlier last week, and regarding prohibiting the location of homeless encampments near schools and early learning facilities. This is something that raised concerns for a lot of us, and had a hearing earlier this week. You can see in the Senate Committee on Local Government, Land Use, and Tribal Affairs. I attended that. Folks from the Housing Alliance, the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance, attended and commented on that bill. So that's a way that you can look up individual bills by the bill number. And then another way that you can get a very easy way to keep track of what's happening in Olympia is just to go to tvw.org. You'll see that they do daily highlights from the legislative session, as well as provide video links to let you look back at any of the hearings that have taken place for the entire session. So I'm going to stop my share and come back, and I see there's a few things in the chat. This information is pretty dense. It is a full-time job for many people to keep track of what's happening in Olympia. And that's why I urge folks, if you have an interest in housing and homelessness issues, do consider attending the Friday afternoon meetings that are hosted by the Housing Alliance. Those advocate calls happen Fridays between 2 and 3, and that's one of the links that I put in the chat. That Zoom meeting is just a really good way to see where things have progressed. And I know in particular, to put into context of what's happening today is the last day for this session for bills that are policy bills to get out of their policy committees. So if there's a bill that you're interested in and it has not already passed out of its policy committee by the end of the day today, then in all likelihood, that bill is dead, although bills are never quite fully dead until the end of the session. but the number of bills that are under consideration will be reduced significantly after today. So it's the first cutoff. So I appreciate your patience as we go through that. Hopefully it's useful information. Again, state advocacy is just one of the places you can be an advocate. You can do so as well at Pierce County Council meetings and committee meetings where there's an opportunity to provide public comment and track what's happening on the agendas there. And you can do it, sorry, at the Tacoma City Council meetings. So to close out the advocacy conversation for today, unless there are questions, and I see the question about the Housing Alliance meetings, and I'll offer that a little more detail in a moment. Wanted to let folks know that the Tacoma City Council study session for this next Tuesday is actually canceled. There is a regular Tuesday night meeting and an opportunity to comment on items on the agenda at that meeting. I don't believe there's anything on the actual agenda directly related to our work. However, there are a number of multifamily tax exemption items on the agenda. That's something about providing housing and who gets tax breaks for providing housing. So there's always an opportunity, if you're creative, to be able to comment at a Tacoma City Council meeting. And briefly, just a little more detail about what takes place during the Housing Alliance meetings in the afternoon. We just review what is happening with Housing Alliance priority bills. And you can find those on the Housing Alliance website. I will put that in the chat. So we provide updates on, for instance, this afternoon, which bills that the Housing Alliance has been supporting are moving forward and which are not. So that today will be an interesting meeting to hear an update from Michelle Thomas, the Housing Alliance Policy and Advocacy Director. We also hear updates on other partners and allies in the state legislature, how those bills are moving forward for those partner organizations as well. So besides having a Housing Alliance agenda, there's actually a support agenda as well that's posted on the Housing Alliance website, and there's 54 items on that support agenda. So lots of good things to support in Olympia this year. For context, we're a little more than a third of the way through this legislative session. It ends on April 23rd. So there's still going to be a weekly Friday afternoon meeting all the way up to the bloody end. So hope you'll join us 2 o'clock. And then, as Kenneth mentioned in the chat, there's a opportunity to stay on the call from 3 to 3:30 for kind of a community healing half hour, which has been a variety of content, anything from yoga, meditation, all that kind of stuff, just to help people unwind at the end of a long week. So let's see, next on our agenda, we have a quick Safe Sites for All update. This was mentioned already earlier in the meeting. Jan had to step away to go to another meeting, but she wanted me to remind everyone that Monday at noon, yes, it's President's Day. Yes, some folks are off for that day, but we're still holding a Safe Sites for All meeting. You can find the link to the meeting on the pchomeless.org website. And I know we'll be talking about a number of things, not just safe parking and safe sites, but also a little bit about the impending cold weather. So if you have the ability to join that meeting Monday at noon, please do. And let's see, I'll open the floor for any committee updates. I know Rosemary stepped away. Don't know if there's anybody else who would want to offer any committee updates today. So that might be a very short session. Okay, not seeing anybody raising a hand. So let's move on to good trouble announcements. Anything that folks want to share with everyone for the good of the order here? Yeah, Shannon.
I already mentioned it once in the chat, but I'd like to drop it again. We're just looking for those community support letters for the development we're trying to get funded. I'm going to drop my email and a link to the draft letter. And thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you, and glad you could hang in here and be able to make the announcement on screen as well.
Hey, Rob, this is Paula. I can't find my hand. For some reason, I lost my hand.
That sounds like a medical issue.
I know. Let's give Paula a hand. Hey, I have an announcement. This comes out of grief. So I guess I would call it Beauty from Ashes. And I'm not sure that's what she's going to call her group. But I have a mother who lost her youngest son to a fentanyl overdose in December. This is a woman who is taking her grief and turning it into some very powerful counseling, and it's grief sharing. She wants to do a grief share meeting, and she is not standing still. She is very powerful. She is volunteering at New Hope 1 day a week. She is talking to all of her son's friends. The way that she speaks, the way that she interacts, and she knew her son's friends prior to him dying from fentanyl overdose. So she interacts with them, those that are still on the street. And what she wants to do is she wants to start a group for the parents and family members of people who have lost people to fentanyl. So or to any kind of drugs or to street violence. One of the people that's going to be a part of the group lost their son who was in his 20s to being shot. So she's working on that. I told her she could use New Hope, but what I wanted to do was just announce it here to this group, because I know all of us know people who have experienced something like that, because it's grassroots, because it's lived experience. I think that this would be the perfect group to give this information to. So she's given me permission to give her email in there. She's putting together the program. She is asking for anybody that might be interested that has experience in leading groups like that, that maybe would want to be a part of this. And but she kind of has her own idea. She came and talked to one of the gentlemen here that lives at my house, who was a good friend of her son's. And I have to tell you that that was one of the toughest, most intense, most emotional conversations I've ever witnessed in my entire life. And she did it with such grace. And it was impactful because it came from a mother to a person who was the age of her son. And it gives those folks that are out on the street, that are still running and gunning, you know, this young man is not. He's just came out of treatment though. So he's used to that, you know, and when she comes to New Hope, she's talking to people that are still doing that. It gives them a different perspective. It gives them the mother's perspective, and some of them don't have mothers, right? So anyway, I want to put this in here. I want you all to be able to have her as a resource and to help support her in this, just like we do other people that are taking tragedy in their lives and doing something with it. And I believe she's thinking of doing it twice a month. Probably will start at New Hope, but I have a suspicion this group is going to get large fairly quickly. She wants it to be a safe place for people to experience grief the way that they want to do grief, and not be a super structured. So I'll put that in there, and thanks for letting me share.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. I think there's going to be a lot of, there are many folks in our community who've been touched by that kind of loss. So I think that's going to be a very useful resource for folks. And please pass along thanks to her for stepping into that space. Others with a item that you'd like to share kind of for the good of the order? All right. And then is there anyone who has, I know we already heard the success story that Jan shared during the on the streets section earlier. Anyone else with a success story who they would like to share today?
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Tanya with Outreach, and I'm brand new with Outreach still, so I'm still trying to like learn everything. I do want to share a success story. We were the team that answered Jen's call for that Christine. So I'm gonna turn red. Sorry, I don't like being in the camera. So we were there, and it was a success because you know, we were able to bring her into shelter, and the shelter was not open yet, so we were able to allow her to be in the shelter and take a shower. She really needed that, wanted a shower, you know. And it was really just, it's really empowering to be a part of such an amazing organization. And I'm still learning, so that's why I'm not as active, but I love hearing you guys talk. And so yes, we're with Outreach. Right now we're doing inclement weather. I'm not sure right now if we are still doing it, but I know that we do answer calls and we go out there. And I know a lot of people that call us and ask us to go over there, you know, they're concerned whether they got the help or not. But yes, I'm here to tell you that sometimes we get so caught up in our work that we don't have the time to like message back and say, hey, you know, we got her. But she made it to the shelter. And then the next day we went back again and we went to get somebody else.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to the group. Thank you for the work you're doing, and you did great on camera. So.
Oh, and also I also serve as the Hispanic community too. So I'm new to the team. I'm also servicing the Hispanic community too.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for being there. Todd, I see your hand up.
So I don't have as much as a success story as much as an update. So a few meetings back ago, I said, you know, a nice idea might be to contact the Tacoma Art Museum and recommend a special homeless exhibit, you know, temporary exhibit for a couple months, whatever, highlighting the heroes in our past who have been homeless, as well as some of their inventions and accomplishments in our world to combat some of the negative narrative that we hear. So I emailed them. They wrote me back. They said, nice idea, but they're already scheduled 3 to 4 years out. So they'll put my idea in the kitty and consider it when in blah, 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 blah. So I didn't get very far, but you know, there's more museums between Seattle and Spokane and Portland. So I'll contact them.
Yeah, thank you for that, Todd. And there also might be just a, you know, there may be an opportunity to do something through either the downtown display spaces that are set up, as well as, you know, reaching out to coffee shops or, you know, places that regularly have people and do display art. So there's a lot of opportunities there. Yeah, Spaceworks is what I was thinking of, Jay. Thank you. All right.
Spaceworks is a place in Tacoma.
It's actually a program of the Downtown Tacoma Association, I think, and maybe the Chamber of Commerce. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Kenneth.
I just wanted to shout out, I saw a lot of those foil blankets this week during the cold weather. So those of you that are passing out the emergency cold weather kits, they are being utilized. It was very good to see that those efforts were actually coming through. Thank you all for that.
Great, that's a great shout out. And Patricia.
I was just going to comment on the art spaces. Try MOG, the Museum of Glass. They're supportive with like veterans. They probably would be supportive in the homeless sphere. Thank you.
Thanks, Patricia. All right, so that wraps up today's meeting. Anything else that we missed that folks wanted to talk about this morning, since we got a couple minutes? We don't have to fill the last hour, so you know, you can get on with your Friday and get back out on the streets. All right, thanks everybody for being here. And if you do have an interest in helping plan next week's meeting, we'll stay on this call and reconvene in about 5 minutes. Otherwise, for everybody else, have a great weekend.